This episode is sponsored by Veneer. Visit glveneer.com to check out their large selection of wood veneer, live edge slabs, and more. When you purchase veneer, more than likely it will be shipped to you in a box just like this sheet here. And this is a piece of figured Claro walnut with a 10mm paper back from Veneer. And at this moment, it's a good idea to really take your time and decide how to best use the wood grain for your project. I've decided that I really like these darker book matched sections in the center here. So my first cut will be right at the seam in the very center of the sheet, and I'll be able to use this side for one of the sides and the top, this side for the other side of the table, and the two inside pieces of the table. I'll also have two offcuts on either side of the sheet, and I'll be able to use those for drawer fronts on a future project. After making the first cut in the center, I'll move the straight edge and cut the two pieces that I'm using for this project. I'll roll up the offcuts and put them aside for a future project. Okay, well now I've made my first cuts, and we can call them rips since I was cutting with the grain, and it might help make things make more sense. And just like anything, as your parts become a little bit smaller, things become a little bit more clear and a little less confusing. And basically when I was looking at the veneer, I was looking for any potential imperfections. And so this is the best piece of veneer for the project that I'm doing as far as the width and anything that's concerned. This piece over here has a small imperfection, so I'll end up using that on the inside of the table. So now that I've established that this is my best piece, I'm going to start over here. I'll measure up 30.5 inches, making sure that my factory edge is square and that there are no breaks or imperfections in it. And I'll measure up the 30.5, which is going to give me a 1/4 inch reveal, or overhang that I can trim off with the flush cut bit and the router. I'll make that mark at 30.5, and then I'll cross cut the veneer using the framing square as a straight edge. So that's going to be my left side of the cabinet. I'll be sure to label it with an arrow pointing towards the front of the cabinet. This is going to be the top of the cabinet, and then this over here is going to be an offcut, and then I'm going to come down on this side of this sheet that has no imperfections, and this will be the right side of the cabinet. Okay, now I've labeled the first piece, measured and marked 30.5 inches. I've got my framing square in position, and I'm going to use a squeeze clamp to keep the square from moving while I'm making the cut. Actually, I just cut that an inch short. Just kidding. Okay, so now I've got this piece here. That's going to be my left side. And now I'll measure a 1/2 inch larger than the table. So the table's 56 inches long. I'll cut this piece at 56.5. Now I have the left side cut, the piece for the top cut and labeled. The next step is to cut the piece for the right side of the table. And in order to get a perfect waterfall grain match, I'd have to make the cross cut right about here, but obviously that's not going to work because then this piece would be too short. So I'll have to compromise and come up all the way to about here. And it's not going to be perfect, but it will be pretty close, and I don't think anyone will notice. This is the piece of veneer that's left over. And since the inside of the table measures just a little bit less than 24, I'll make a mark at 24.25 and cross cut two pieces for the inside. Okay, well, really happy with the way this is turning out, and I'm happy to have gotten this far without making any major screw-ups. And as you may know, I've posted a lot of videos about veneer, but I've never really just focused on the cutting of veneer. And since this piece of veneer is so expensive at almost $600 a sheet, I thought it would be good to focus on just that. And how the wood grain affects your design. And these are the things you should be thinking about as you're building your project. So before I started building this, I looked at the sheet. I didn't spend a ton of time with it, but I had a good idea what I was dealing with. And once I opened it up again, I kind of knew where I was. Now this is heavily figured, quartered Claro walnut. It's like the top of the top when it comes to walnut veneer. Now you can get other walnut veneers that are going to be less money, but this is like kind of the best, and this is what my client wanted. So I was really excited to have the opportunity to work with it. And just to put veneer and prices a little bit more in perspective, the white oak dresser that I built about 6 months ago, that sheet of veneer was only about $100. So there's all kinds of species, there's all kinds of different prices, and I would really suggest to go over to the GL Veneer gallery and take a look. It might inspire you to design something. And it's funny how like just having the material sometimes will inspire a project. I've already got a good project in mind for the cutoffs from this project. Now one last thing I want to talk about, because I get this question all the time, is if you're going to build a piece of furniture out of plywood and then veneer it, why wouldn't you just use that species of plywood? So in this case it would be walnut. So why wouldn't I just use walnut plywood? Or for the dresser, why wouldn't I just use white oak plywood? First of all, you're not going to get as many options as far as wood grain and color and things like that. And second of all, it changes the entire way that you build something. So if I were to build this with plywood, then I would have to band the edge and I would have to get a perfect miter joint at this right angle here. And I don't want to do either one of those things. By building this with Baltic birch plywood, not only do I have a very strong, sturdy cabinet, but I've also banded the edge before the veneer, and that hides the seam. I've also used a butt joint at this right angle here, which is much easier and stronger than a miter joint. And then I veneer over and I've got a perfect waterfall grain match, and it was relatively easy. So hope you found this video helpful. Big thank you to GL Veneer for supporting what I do. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. I forgot to mention that I do have a veneer for beginners, kind of a introduction to veneer, and I'll put a link to that video in the description below.